Our next guest has something most of our viewers don't have, namely 62 brothers and sisters. Imagine the challenges of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for this bunch. Here in West Michigan, Sarah Dieleman's life is slightly less chaotic, having only 3 school-age sons to shepherd through the week. In her spare time, she directs activities for a nursery and primary school in her native Uganda and is here to talk about giving, receiving, and grassroots empowerment. Sarah, it's such a pleasure to welcome you to Feel Like You Belong.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you, Alan.
You bet. So tell me about this. We talked about this earlier, but you have 62 siblings.
Yes. I was born in Uganda, Africa, which is called the Pearl of Africa, in a small town called Karilo. And in this town, there was a man called William Wamujje. Actually, before I became a Dieleman, I was called Sarah Wamujje. So my father had a lot of wives. Some of them were girlfriends, but we ended up becoming a family of 62 children. But growing in this big family, it was quite a challenge. Understanding the reason behind my dad, understanding that you are not going to get the love and its full potential, knowing that anytime your stepmother is having another child or your mom is having another child, it was not easy. Providing for school, having clothing, feeding, and all the basic needs that anybody could ever get in a family, it was a challenge.
And we talked about earlier about how this is sort of a tradition from the past, but is this done very much today?
Not today. Culturally, people used to have a lot of wives depending on how much riches they have and how much dowry they can pay. My dad was a very successful businessman. But not everybody on that generation of my dad had many wives like my dad. So having money, being rich is a factor that can contribute to that. But these days, it's like a modernization, also HIV coming into, the communities, killing a lot of people. It has made people to just stick to one wife and be faithful and raise a family because it's not very good.
Sure. And it's truly, if you think about our time is limited, how can you spend time with that many people? It's a challenge.
It is very challenging because I remember growing up not seeing my dad for 2 weeks or 2 months or 3 months or half a year. And yet I was so close to him because I looked like his mother who died when my dad was 6 years old.
Okay.
So I reminded him of his mother. So all the time was calling me mom. But can you imagine going for 6 months with somebody who calls you mother and is your dad is not anywhere to be seen and found? It was hurtful and painful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, in the United States, the majority of people speak just one language, American English.
Right.
In much of the rest of the world, it's natural because many language groups live side by side to get along with your neighbors or people across the county.
Right.
You need to speak a second or third language. In your case, you speak 5 languages. What are those?
If I may correct you, I speak 8 actually.
Okay.
So in Uganda, we have 54 tribes, and each tribe speaks a different language. But we all come from different ethnic groups. Like the Bantu group that I come from, you can be able to hear other words and understand other words from different tribes. But as a matter of fact, my mother tongue is Lusoga. I'm a Musoga. And we were colonized by the British. So to know English, you have to go to school. So that's my second language. Then Swahili is basically spoken by the policemen or the army men. So that's number 3. Then I have Lugwere, I have Luganda, I have Luchiga, I have Lunyankole, and I have Lugisu. So I know 8 languages.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So your husband Dale is not from East Africa, he's from West Michigan. How did the two of you meet?
Actually, Dale used to work for Worldwide Christian Schools, which is now 10 Schools International. So he was holding workshops in Africa, Cambodia, Indonesia, in different countries in the world. So he was holding one in Kenya, and I was invited by my pastor who came and studied at Calvin College. So he knew Dale through the gentleman called Jim Lont, and they invited me because I was the principal of the school. So I went to the workshop in Kenya. That was in 2000. That's when I met him. But then I didn't know what was going on with him. He didn't know what was going on with me. What put us together was the workshop. So then we fell in love in 2005.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, and how long have you been in Michigan then?
9 years
Okay.
so far, yes.
Okay. So what's been the hardest adjustment?
The hardest adjustment first was the snow. The snow is beautiful. I'm telling you, it is beautiful. When I looked at the snow from when I was inside the house and looking at the snow, like heaven is on the floor, heaven is on the ground. But feeling the snow was my challenge. And I felt like, man, how in the world can you be here and survive? But also another challenge is in the summer, the humidity. It can get to 80 in Uganda, but it's not as humid as here.
Got it.
So that also killed me. I felt like, can I fly out? I cannot just go right away to Uganda. But I've just learned to cope up with, plus the food. There we eat hot food all the time. But here you find sandwiches, you find salads, you find all different kinds of cold food that I was not used to. But I'm telling you, 9 years, I'm getting better.
Okay, you've adjusted your style of cooking a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So you live, physically you live in West Michigan, but a good part of your heart is still in East Africa, and you have undertaken to start a school.
Yes.
I forget the name of the town in Uganda.
In Kaliro.
Kaliro, right?
Yes.
So it's a nursery school and a primary school.
Yes,
Called
that's
the
right.
Potter's House School. Can you talk about that?
Yes, the Potter's House School. I grew up in this Kaliro, and I believe in those children in Kaliro. I always say that if I grew up in a family of 62 children, and I can be able to speak English, because you can only get English in the school, I do believe in these children, that if I made a difference in different communities, I can still make a difference in my hometown. So that's why we started this school. When I was growing up, we were raised by saying that, oh, when the Western culture come, when Western people come, they are going to give you, because they were just teaching us how to receive. You receive, you receive. But I have learned one thing, that giving with all your heart is very important. You can do anything. You can prosper. You can take care of other people, not just focusing on you. I am going to get, what can I get from this? What can I get from that? So basically what we are doing is that we are teaching the children in Africa. My brother is now the principal of the school, to be who they are and to work hard, to give their best, but also looking at not to give, not to receive, but what can they give to their community? How can they build the nation? How can they believe in themselves? So being that the school is in that very area where I grew up, and they understand and they know of my father whom I lost last year, they understand that we were 62. So when we stand up to tell them that, honey, it's going to be all right, they can understand that.
Sure. And
Yes.
this is actually important for you to undertake the organization and funding of the school, because there isn't universal free primary education.
We have some, to a certain extent, we have government school. They say universal, but then you have to pay contributions, and they are quite far away, like 10 miles, 3 miles, and you can imagine there's no school buses that are going to take the children, and kidnapping children is rampant. So it's very difficult to access that education. Still you have to pay, and
So
it's not the good quality of education that the children need.
So to create good education for kids local, especially in maybe somewhat more remote regions, it takes initiatives like this
Yes.
to ensure that all kids have access, especially if it's a little too expensive.
Yes, yes. And the challenge is that we encourage parents to contribute, because we want the parents to be part of this.
Sure.
Because when I was growing up, going to school, my parents had to pay. Actually, they tell you to go home if you have not paid for the whole term, and back and forth. They send you home. Go bring school fees. We call it school fees. Go bring school fees, and that destabilizes the learning itself. and the children are going back and forth to school. So it is very important that we care and we do everything to encourage our teachers who are Christian teachers who are teaching these students. So the children play their role, the parents play their role, and the directors play their role, and the teachers play their role in this case.
So how many children are currently enrolled?
Right now we have 200.
Okay, wow.
Yes.
That's a big responsibility.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So how do you communicate with the teachers there and with your brother?
We have internet.
Okay.
We have cell phones, so we communicate. We have an app called WhatsApp, so you can hear. It's free on my internet. It comes with the package, but there it costs. So it's cheaper in Africa than here, so we are able to communicate.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if any of our viewers wanted to help you out, how do they contact you?
They can contact 616-821-5336 or Dieleman, which is DADIELEMAN @yahoo.com.
We'll put that on our screen for our guests.
All right, thank you.
Earlier, when we were talking about this concept of giving and receiving, we had talked about, you had mentioned the metaphor about giving people a hook, not giving them a fish.
Right.
Can you talk about grassroots empowerment?
Grassroots empowerment opportunities, it is designed to empower the children so that they can be able to stand on their own, not depending on other people. Because I've ever depended on people, and as I know, you have ever depended on people and they have let you down. But when you are let down, you know what to do. Because what we did with grassroots empowerment opportunities in Uganda, Africa, we started what we call a foster home. And in a foster home, we had 10 children, but 7 of them succeeded. 3 of them were girls and they got pregnant. As you can expect when you are raising a family, not everything goes 100%. But we managed to get 2 of them who are teachers. Now they can fish for themselves. They got the hook, they have the certificate. They are certified teachers. One is a preschool teacher and another one is a primary teacher, which means like elementary teacher. Then Frank is going to finish doing, he wants to be an electrician. He's finishing this December. Then Sarah, who has HIV-AIDS, went for hairstyling. Then we have Desire, who is going to graduate from high school next year. So yes, that's why it's better to give a hook than to give a fish.
And these are really inspiring stories mentioning specific names and the career paths that they're now enabled to take because of their education, because of that leg up that education gives to them. I want to think a little bit about, you mentioned earlier HIV-AIDS, which
Yes.
in the past has been a real scourge on
Yes.
for millions of people across the continent.
Right.
But because of work done by the Clinton Global Initiative and other
Yes.
groups, drugs are being made available, and
Yes.
people are able to keep their symptoms under control. And so there used to be a lot of despair, and I think there's a lot more optimism.
Yes, I really, really appreciate the Clinton Foundation. Now I'm not playing politics, but I'm one of the beneficiaries of what they are doing in Africa. My sister went to the Maldimay Center to get free medication, and she lasted longer. Then my niece, I was talking about, Sarah, who did hairstyling. She was born HIV. She had HIV. She contracted it from the mother.
Sure.
And we didn't even think that she was going to live for 2 weeks because pearls could come here and here and here. She has scars all over her head. And one time I remember her eyes crossed and I felt like, man, this is not very good. But we were able to take her to the free medication at the Maldimay Center, and Sarah is graduated from school, and she is going to be 22 next year in August, and we are so glad and privileged to have this medication center. And as a matter of fact, in 2015 and 2014 and 15, we've been taking people to the free medication, to the Maldimay Center. We raised money here in the US and we bought 2 vans. One is a 14-seater and another one is a 9-seater. So we were taking people to the free medication. Why? Because some of them are bedridden, they cannot get out of the bed and walk 20 miles, 30 miles to the Maldimay Center. So that is an impact and an effort we have done as grassroots empowerment opportunities. Now we also have what we call the PEP program, the Peer Education Program. The Peer Education Program is the peers teaching other peers about HIV/AIDS. So that's the way we sensitize about HIV.
So the empowerment is really shared in the
Yes.
whole community.
Yes.
We're going to have to wrap up in just a minute, but I wanted to come full circle because we had talked earlier about belonging,
Yes.
the theme of this show. For you, you are thousands of miles away from where you're originally from. What creates belonging for you here?
What creates belonging? We have all to belong somewhere. But what creates belonging to me is where my heart is. My heart is where the people are, helping people, not only in Africa, but here. When I see somebody struggling, I see what good can I make out of this? How can I understand his problem? How can this touch me? What can I do to help? So my heart, the person you see, I belong where my heart is.
That's awesome.
Yes.
We're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for coming by and sharing your story with us today.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you very
bet,
much.
you bet.
I'm glad to come here.
Campus security outside, and we all decide that we need to get out of here. We're underage. We don't want to get caught. MIPs.